The magnetic pull. The crystal chandeliers cast dancing shadows across the marble floors of the Whitmore Gallery as Eleanor Rosewood adjusted the lighting on the final painting. Tonight's exclusive auction would determine the fate of her family's art collection, pieces she had guarded like precious children for the past 3 years since her father's death. Her emerald silk dress whispered against her legs as she moved. The fabric chosen specifically to complement the deep greens in the Monet that would be the evening's centerpiece. The gallery doors opened with their familiar chime, and Elena turned to greet the first guests. Her breath caught in her throat as a tall figure filled the doorway. Marcus Cain stepped into her world like he owned it, his presence commanding attention from every corner of the room. His dark suit was perfectly tailored, emphasizing broad shoulders and a lean frame that spoke of disciplined strength. But it was his eyes that made her pulse quicken. Steel gray with flecks of silver that seemed to see straight through her carefully constructed composure. Ms. Rosewood. His voice was velvet over steel, carrying the hint of an accent she couldn't place. "I've been looking forward to this evening." Elena found herself moving toward him as if drawn by invisible strings. "Mr. Cain, I wasn't certain you would come." She extended her hand, and when his fingers closed around hers, electricity shot up her arm. His touch lingered longer than propriety demanded, his thumb tracing a small circle against her palm before he released her. "I rarely miss opportunities that intrigue me," he said, his eyes never leaving her face. "And you, Elena Rosewood, are the most intriguing opportunity I've encountered in years." The way he said her name made her feel like he was tasting it, savoring each syllable. She should have been offended by his presumption, but instead, heat pooled low in her belly. "You speak as if you know me, Mr. Cain, but we've never met. Haven't we?" His smile was dangerous, full of secrets. "I feel as though I've been searching for you my entire life." The gallery began to fill with other guests, but Elena felt as though they existed in a bubble separate from the rest of the world. Marcus offered his arm, and she found herself accepting, allowing him to escort her through her own exhibition. His presence beside her was intoxicating, the subtle scent of his cologne mixing with something uniquely him that made her want to move closer. "Tell me about this one," he said, stopping before a passionate landscape painted in storms of red and gold. His voice dropped to a whisper that only she could hear. What inspired such fire? Elena's cheeks warmed as she looked at the painting, suddenly seeing it through his eyes. The artist painted it after losing someone he loved. He said it represented the moment when desire becomes so intense it threatens to consume everything in its path. "Dangerous territory," Marcus murmured, stepping closer until she could feel the heat radiating from his body. "But perhaps the most beautiful flames are the ones that burn hot enough to destroy us." She looked up at him, her lips parting slightly as his meaning became clear. The air between them crackled with tension so thick she could barely breathe. "Mr. Cain, Marcus," he corrected, his hand coming up to rest lightly on her lower back. "Say my name, Elena." "Marcus." The word escaped her lips like a prayer, and she saw his pupils dilate in response. The auction began, but Elena barely registered the proceedings. She was hyper-aware of Marcus beside her, the way his fingers occasionally brushed hers when reaching for his bidding paddle, the way his breath stirred her hair when he leaned close to make a comment. Each touch, each whispered word built the fire between them higher. When the Monet came up for bidding, Elena held her breath. This piece meant everything to her. It was the last painting her father had acquired before his death, and she had hoped beyond hope that she might find a way to keep it. The bidding started at 50,000 and quickly escalated. Elena's heart sank as the price climbed beyond anything she could afford. Then Marcus raised his paddle. 200,000, he said calmly, his voice cutting through the excited murmur of the crowd. Elena stared at him in shock. The auctioneer called for higher bids, but the room had gone silent. No one challenged Marcus Cain. "Sold," to the gentleman in the front row. Elena felt dizzy as the gavel fell. Marcus had just spent a fortune on her father's painting, and she couldn't understand why. "Marcus, I don't understand. Why would you—" "Because it means something to you." he said simply, turning to face her fully. And I find myself willing to do anything to put that light back in your eyes. The auction continued around them, but Elena was lost in the depths of his gaze. This man, this stranger who felt like destiny, had just given her back a piece of her heart she thought was lost forever. Without thinking, she reached up and touched his cheek, marveling at the way his breath hitched at the contact. "Elena," he whispered, covering her hand with his own. "You're playing with fire." "Maybe I want to burn," she whispered back, surprised by her own boldness. As the evening wound down and the gallery emptied, Marcus lingered. Elena found herself walking with him through the now quiet space, the paintings around them bearing witness to the electric tension that filled the air between them. "I have a confession to make," Marcus said, as they paused before the window overlooking the city lights. "I didn't come here tonight for the art." Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. "Then why did you come?" He turned to face her, reaching up to trace the line of her jaw with infinite gentleness. "I came for you. I've been watching you, Elena, waiting for the right moment to approach you. You fascinate me in ways I can't begin to explain." The admission should have frightened her, but instead it sent liquid fire through her veins. "That's rather presumptuous of you, Mr. Cain." "Marcus," he corrected again, his thumb brushing across her lower lip. "And yes, it is. But I've never been one to let opportunity slip away, especially not when that opportunity comes in the form of a woman who makes me forget every rule I've ever made for myself." Elena's lips parted under his touch, and she saw his control waver for the first time. "What rules?" she breathed. "The ones that keep me from kissing you right now," he admitted, his voice rough with want. "The ones that tell me I should walk away before I do something we'll both regret." "And if I told you I didn't want you to walk away?" The words escaped before she could stop them, bold and breathless with need. Marcus's eyes darkened to storm clouds. "Elena, you don't know what you're asking." "Then show me," she whispered, rising on her toes to bring her lips closer to his. "Kiss me, Marcus. Kiss me deeper than anyone ever has before." For a moment he held perfectly still, his breathing shallow and uneven. Then his control snapped like a wire pulled too tight. His arms came around her, pulling her flush against his body as his mouth claimed hers with devastating thoroughness. The kiss was fire and lightning, consuming and electric all at once. Elena melted into him, her hands fisting in his jacket as she kissed him back with equal desperation. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard, the space between them charged with promise and possibility. "Elena," Marcus whispered against her lips, her name a prayer and a plea. "What are you doing to me?" "The same thing you're doing to me," she whispered back, her heart racing as she realized there was no going back from this moment. Whatever happened next, she was ready to surrender to the fire burning between them. Surrender to desire. 3 days had passed since the auction, and Elena couldn't get Marcus Cain out of her mind. He haunted her thoughts during the day and invaded her dreams at night. The memory of his kiss lingered on her lips like a brand, and she found herself touching them absently while she worked, remembering the way he had held her like she was something precious and dangerous all at once. The Monet had been delivered to her apartment that morning with a note written in Marcus's bold handwriting. "This belongs with you. As do I if you'll have me." Now she stood before the painting in her living room, her silk robe clinging to her curves as evening shadows danced across the walls. The familiar chime of her doorbell made her heart skip, and she knew without looking who it would be. She had been expecting him, hoping for him, dreading and craving this moment in equal measure. Marcus stood in her doorway looking devastating in dark jeans and a white shirt rolled up to his forearms. His hair was slightly disheveled as if he had been running his fingers through it, and his gray eyes burned with an intensity that made her knees weak. "I tried to stay away," he said without preamble, his voice rough with 3 days of fighting himself. "I told myself it was too fast, too intense, that I should give you time to think clearly. But I can't stop thinking about you, Elena. You're in my blood like fire." Elena stepped back to let him in, her pulse racing as he filled her space with his presence. I haven't been thinking clearly since the moment I met you, she admitted, closing the door behind him. I keep telling myself this is crazy, that I don't know you well enough to feel this way, but logic has nothing to do with this, he finished, moving closer until only inches separated them. What I feel for you defies every rational thought I've ever had. She looked up at him, seeing her own desperate need reflected in his eyes. What do you feel for me, Marcus? His hands came up to frame her face, his touch achingly gentle despite the fire burning in his gaze. I feel like I've been sleepwalking through my entire life until I met you. Like everything before this moment was just marking time until I could find my way to you. The words stole her breath, and she leaned into his touch like a flower turning toward the sun. I've never felt anything like this before, she whispered. It terrifies me. Good things should terrify us, he murmured, his thumbs tracing the high line of her cheekbones. They remind us we're alive. Elena's hands came up to rest against his chest, feeling the rapid beat of his heart beneath her palms. I don't want to be afraid anymore, Marcus. I don't want to think or analyze or protect myself. I just want to feel. Something shifted in his expression, desire and tenderness warring in his eyes. Elena, if we cross this line, there's no going back. I won't be a casual encounter for you. I can't be. I don't want casual, she breathed, her fingers clutching at his shirt. I want everything. I want you to consume me the way you've been doing in my dreams. I want to surrender to this fire between us and see where it burns. Marcus's control cracked, and he pulled her against him with desperate need. You're sure? Because once I have you, Elena, I'm never letting you go. Instead of answering with words, Elena rose on her toes and captured his lips with hers. The kiss was hungry and demanding. 3 days of pent-up longing poured into the connection between them. Marcus responded with equal fervor, his hands tangling in her dark hair as he deepened the kiss until she was dizzy with want. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard, the air between them thick with promise. Kiss me deeper, Elena demanded, her voice husky with desire. The way you did that first night, like you're drowning, and I'm the only air you need. Marcus's eyes flashed with something primal and beautiful. God, Elena, what you do to me. His lips found hers again, this time with a thoroughness that stole her breath and sent fire racing through her veins. She melted into him, her body molding itself against his as if they were made to fit together. His hands skimmed down her sides, mapping the curves of her body through the thin silk of her robe. When his fingers found the belt at her waist, he paused, pulling back to look into her eyes. Are you certain? Elena's answer was to reach for the buttons of his shirt, her fingers trembling slightly as she worked them free. I've never been more certain of anything in my life. Marcus caught her hands, bringing them to his lips to press kisses to each fingertip. I want to worship you, he whispered against her skin. I want to learn every sound you make, every place that makes you gasp my name. The words sent liquid fire through her veins, and Elena felt herself surrendering completely to the passion building between them. Whatever happened next, she knew she would never be the same. Marcus Cain had awakened something in her that had been sleeping her entire life, a hunger and need that only he could satisfy. As they moved together toward her bedroom, the city lights painting patterns on the walls around them, Elena realized that sometimes the most beautiful destruction was the kind that rebuilt you into someone stronger, someone more alive than you ever thought possible. In the morning, she would wake in Marcus's arms and realize that her life had been divided into 2 parts, before him and after him, and she wouldn't want it any other way. The Monet watched over them from its place on the wall, a silent witness to the moment when 2 souls recognized each other across the vast space of possibility and chose to leap into the beautiful unknown together. Love, Elena would learn, was the ultimate act of courage, the willingness to be completely vulnerable with another person and trust them with the deepest parts of yourself. And with Marcus Cain, she was ready to be fearless.